Right, hello, I'm Yukiko, and we will talk about logistics or space healing. I don't know. I don't know why it's called logistics for me. When I started, it always sounded like industrial stuff, transporting stuff from A to B, but it's not. So there are technically three types of tank on any ship. You have the shield on the outside, then the armor, and finally the hull. Now, with logistics, you try to keep one of those up. Obviously, the one that is used in your fleet. So if you're in a shield fleet, you want to have shield logi. If you're in an armor fleet, you want to have armor logi. And if you're in a hull tank fleet, you don't want to have logi. That's one exception. There are remote hull repair modules, but it's not a thing. Never think about it. If you think about logistics, you do either shield or armor. The remote hull repairers have their use cases still while pauses exist because they sometimes need to be wrapped, but that's a very special case. There are no ships with bonus on hull repairs, and resists on hulls are not really good. So overall, doing hull repairs is not a good idea. So skip that. Currently, Brave and also the Coalition is pretty much an armor group. Sorry, shield group, obviously. We do mostly shield fleets, if not only shield fleets. So our primary thing to look at will be shield logistics, but it's important to know about armor logistics and the differences. So if we switch doctrines at some point, you have an idea what's going on. Generally, both shield and armor remote repairs are high slot modules. So you will usually see logistics ships with the high slots full of wrappers and sometimes energy transfers. Now you have 4 races in this game that you can play. 2 armor and 2 shield focused, and that's the same for their respective logi ships. So you have Minmatar and Kaldari for the shield side, and then you have the Galanti and Amar for the armor side. The differences are subtle, but for shield logistics, if you look at the ships that are available, you have Minmatar on the one side. They focus on speed, and they are pretty much more solo focused. You fly them either passive regeneration for your cap or with cap boosters, while the Kaldari ships are in a bit special because they usually have bonus on energy transfers. And this leads to the magical thing called cap chain. But let's skip that for a moment and come back to cap chains later because they are pretty dank, but also pretty complicated and not that important for the beginning of logi. So for the armor side, you have Galanti and Amar. Again, Galanti focuses more on the solo part. They use usually cap boosters for their capacitor, and then Amar, again, the cap chain thing. For ships, you have frigates and cruisers mostly. There are no logi destroyers, no logi battle cruisers, no logi battleships with one exception, the Nestor, which has bonus on armor logistics, but it's a super rare use case. Our wormhole fleets sometimes run Nestors because you can cross-wrap yourself, or rather the fleet has some nice other things going for it, but apart from that, it's really a rare case to see a nest around. So it is mostly frigates and cruisers. Both exist in T1 and T2. So you have the Bantam and the Burst, which are the T1 logi shield frigs from Kaldari and Minmatar. Same goes for Galanti and Amar. You have T1 armor logi frigs. Then T2 variants for all of those exist, and for cruisers the same. You will see a lot of Ospreys and Scythes in Brave and Legacy, which are the respective T1 cruisers for Shield Logi. And then you have the Exequera and the whatever it is, Augura for Amar and Galanti for armor logistics. And again, T2 variants of all those ships exist. The basic idea of logi is just like shooting someone. You lock a target up and you activate your high slot modules. Nothing special in that part. You can rep anyone. So be careful if you do something. If you do a ship that has damage and reps, don't confuse your friends and enemies. So right, if you lock up friend and an enemy, make sure you put the reps on your friend and the damage on your enemy, not the other way around. In terms of skills, just so you have an idea, there are the obvious skills. You have the frigate and cruiser skills that give you a bonus on the respective ship you're flying. Then you have the T2 skills, logistics frigates and logistics cruisers. You want those to minimum 4 before you start flying the T2 hulls, just because T2 hulls are pretty expensive and the bonuses on the hulls are very good, but make most sense if you have 4 or 5 in the respective logistics skill. Then you need the remote repair skill, so shield emission systems or remote armors, remote repair systems. And that's basically it. You obviously need local tank skills, all the things you need for your tank modules. But that's the basic skills you need for logistics. But obviously there is one thing that is a big problem with logistics, because those rep modules use a lot of capacitor. So your capacitor is empty is a thing, and you will want to watch that. And to mitigate that, you will want to train all the engineering skills that have something to do with capacitor. There are also navigation skills related to capacitor for MWD and AB, also pretty important for fast fleets. And very important for logistics are targeting skills. You basically want all the targeting skills. Range targeting, signature analysis for faster targeting, target management to lock up more targets, especially if you go in the direction of T2 logistics. Those ships can lock up 10 targets, which means you need at least target management 5 and then advanced target management 2. No, I think 1 is enough. No, 2. To get your 10 target slots, so you can actually use the ship fully. And it's pretty good. You should do that. Then the sensor compensation skills are pretty good, because usually to take out logi, it's a good idea to have ECM and just jam logi out. And obviously sensor compensation skills will help you mitigate that problem. So at least train for now those for the respective race that you plan to fly. Which, hint, 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 in Brave and Legacy is probably Kaldari. Okay, what else? We can probably undock at this point. So if you're in GE, just undock. Obviously you want drone skills as well. I'm a super fan of repair drones, so if you can squeeze it in at some point after having T2 logistics, and if you really want to fly logistics, train for T2 repair drones. They are really good, especially on ships that have a bonus on repair drones. Right. Yes, but these are probably T1, I assume, in the fit. Yeah, right. So, yeah, because I mean, getting T1 repair bots is pretty good, pretty easy. Do that as fast as possible, but T2 is quite a long train, so squeeze it in whenever possible. And yeah, that's one important thing. You will see armor bots on shield logistics fleets, and you might wonder why. The point is shields regenerate, so it's not that important in an armor fleet. But if someone breaks through your shield, even with your shield logi, and hits the armor of someone, that is not regenerating unless you dock up and repair. So for longer fleets, to get someone up to full again in between fights, or in, let's say, fight less times, you have those armor bots. So if you're on a save or at a gate or whatever, waiting for something, put out those armor bots and put them on targets that have armor damage to get them back up, because that might prevent them from dying in one of the next engagements. All right. We're in space, so you have your fleet window. Fleet window is an important tool for the logistics pilot, because what do you do now? You need to lock up friendlies to heal them. One way to do that is obviously to click them in space, and then you have a multitude of ways to do that. Either use your selected item window and click lock target, you right click and say lock target, or you control click. But this is all pretty cumbersome, and especially in 3D space with a lot of things going on, it's pretty hard to click on something. So that's not how you want to do this. There is a special thing called watch list, which is very useful for logistics pilots. So if you have your fleet window, you can right click anyone in fleet that is not you. Just find someone, and then you should see the option add to watch list. Just do that, and you will see another window pops up, the watch list window with that person in it. You will see you have the 3 bars which represent shield, armor, and hull, and to the left you have a ship type icon, which is also pretty neat. So you see what kind of ship that person is flying, at least which size. So that's a nice indicator of what you're wrapping there. There's a little neat trick in a fleet like this. The watch list can have 15 entries. That's not too much, but it's usually enough to put on the most important parts of the fleet. If you're in a fleet like this, you have 13 other people, so you could probably put everyone on the watch list, which is definitely what you want to do if possible. And if you right-click a squad, in this case squad 1, you can say add squad members to watch list, and it will add all the squad members. That can be pretty neat if you have a fleet with multiple squads and sort logi into the squads. Everyone can just put their own squad onto the watch list, and so you basically spread out the watch list over all logi pilots, so everyone has someone from the fleet on watch list, or basically everyone in the fleet is on someone's watch list. If someone is not on grid, you will not have the tank bars, so that's an indicator for someone not being on grid. Additionally, in the watch list, you can sort people. That's pretty important. I can tell you how I usually sort it later. And to the right, you can put colors on people. So that's a relatively new feature, and it's super helpful, because usually your watch list will contain different kinds of people. So in the typical fleet, you will want to have the FC or FCs on the watch list. So primary FC, secondary, maybe tertiary FC. You will want to have the logistics anchor on your watch list, possible other FCs or important people that manage something. Then the so-called snowflakes, which is usually special ships that make the whole fleet stronger, but where not too many are in the fleet. That's usually some kind of E-war specialist or something else that is just important. And finally, you might want to add some of your logistics friends, so you can wrap them easier. Exactly, and that's the last part, cap buddies. If we have a cap chain, which is what you see down here with the wonderful ospreys going back and forth, those big yellow beams. This is basically a cap chain in action. And the idea is the following. The Amar and the Caldari ships, logistic ships, all have a bonus. So if you right click one of the ospreys and say show info and go to traits, you will see role bonus, remote capacitor transmitter range, and also transmitter amount. The interesting part is usually if you use a cap transmitter, you will lose more cap than the other one gains. But with the bonus, it disables all logical physics rules, and basically you lose less cap than the other one gains. So if you build a chain and you give someone else cap, that one gives someone else cap, that one gives someone else cap, and finally it comes back to you, everyone gains cap in the process. There's it's super magical, and it basically means as long as the cap chain is up, you will have infinite cap. Like you generally cap chain fittings are made in a way that with all modules on, you should never have or get out of cap. That's pretty neat. That's the super bonus of Caldari and Amar. So in bigger fleets, it's amazing to have cap chains because it's so much better than running cap boosters that might run out at some point, or just passively regenerating and hoping that you don't run out of cap. But obviously it has its drawbacks, which are, first of all, the management. Like you need to have very clear rules who is cap chaining who, because otherwise it doesn't work out. Then you need to make sure that the cap chain is up all the time. No one can forget to put it up. And if someone is jammed via ECM, you need to reroute the cap chain on the fly. If someone dies, you need to reroute it. If someone is booshed away, you need to reroute it. So it's a lot of micromanagement going on there. Can be a big problem in fast fleets, probably not in tie-dye so much, but if you have just a couple of logistics and someone drops out of cap chain and the whole chain breaks, then you're in big trouble. Generally, getting out of cap is something you don't want to do in logistics, never, ever. That's the one thing you want to avoid. So be aware, simulate the ship you have with your skills, figure out how long cap, how much cap you have. I usually take the time and figure out how many repairs I can run with my prop mod on. So I have a rough idea. Let's say I can run MWD and one repper and be cap stable. So I know, okay, as long as I'm running MWD, if I do more than one repper, I will lose cap. So I need to be careful. If I can get away with one repper, perfect, it's fine. I can run my MWD all the time. But it's something to be aware of. Same goes for any defense modules you have, like invults and stuff. They also use cap, not that much, but it makes a difference, or it can make a difference in not cap chained fleets. So also be aware of that. Personally, I wouldn't recommend in the beginning to leave them off. But if you're super comfortable and you see in the overview if someone is targeting you, you can obviously try that. But yeah, be really aware that it's pretty tricky to manage to hit the right moment to activate them in the heat of the fight. All right, back to the watch list. Now you have all the people on your watch list. You have the FCs, you have the special snowflakes, you have your cap chain buddies, and some other logi. So first of all, you can set colors. That's totally up to you. I usually set the FCs to red, cap chain to blue, and special snowflakes to yellow, but everything else is up for personal preference and the specific fleet I'm in. But the one thing I do is sorting. For me, I put DFCs at the top of the watch list and the cap chain buddies at the bottom of the top list, and in order how I need them. So if I have 2 cap chain buddies, I put them as last and second from last. The next ones in the chain, if I lose one of those, are on top of that. So I know immediately, okay, if whatever my cap chain buddy is jammed, I can go one up in my watch list and use that person as next in line for the cap chain. Stuff like that. It's just make some rule for yourself and stick to it. That way, it's much easier in the heat of the fight to not lose control and knowing who's the next one, especially for cap chain. Never only have your immediate partners on the watch list, at least another next in line. Right. So you have your watch list. That's pretty neat. On the watch list, you can see damage, and that's why I'm not in a logistics ship. I will provide damage in this fleet just for showing off. So here we go. I will do some DPS, and you should see it in watch list. Person blinking red. See some pixels red on the shield. So do something about it. Rep. Very good.
Yukiko, where you want to go over broadcast?
Yeah, broadcast is next.
Ah.
So now you have your watch list set up. That's perfect. You can see everyone. You see who is targeted. That's fine. But now we look at bigger fleet fights as well, of course, where you don't have everyone in your watch list. So in that case, you need another way to figure out who is in need of reps. And for that, we switch over to the history tab in the fleet window. So right beside my fleet, you have history. Switch over to that. Make sure your filter is set to broadcast history. All works too, but I prefer broadcast history because it's not as cluttered. And now, at the bottom of your fleet window, you should see some icons. First one is an eye icon. If you don't see them, you have 2 arrows on the bottom right of your fleet window. Click those, and the icons should show up. So the icons. First icon, the arrow, the eye is enemy spotted. Not interesting for us. More interesting are the next 3. The cube one is need armor. The shield one is need shield, and the next one is need capacitor. Those are the 3 ones that are pretty important for logistics, and that's how people tell you they need reps, even if they are not on your watch list. You know, there's Jigsaw, Isimasu needs armor. That is a lie, but okay. So what do you do with that information? Obviously, you need to lock up that target, and the quickest way to do that is to control-click in the history, like on that entry with the broadcast. That will lock up the target, and then you can start repping them. That's how logistics in big fleets works. You have your broadcast history. I switch to history right in the beginning of the fleet after setting up the watch list and stay there for the whole fleet and just log up from history window and give reps. Now, the history window has the same function as your watch list. You can give colors, which is pretty important. So if you click the burger menu in the top left of your fleet window, you have the option to broadcast settings. If you open that, you can enable and disable different broadcasts. Might also be helpful to not have such a cluttered broadcast. You could disable target broadcasts in logistics. I personally don't do it, but it's obviously up to you. If you feel it's too much for you, if there are target calls all the time, obviously disable them and focus on the logistics. I usually leave them on to just have an idea what's going on, how fast we are killing targets and stuff like that. But it's super optional. The only thing is this settings stay. So remember to change them in the next fleet when you're not flying logistics. So if you disable targets, remember to re-enable them after the fleet at some point. Additionally, which is super helpful, you can give all the broadcasts colors. So I have my color set up since ages and never change it. Armor is red for me, shield is orange, capacitor yellow, target is blue, aligned to green. That's totally up to you, but I also recommend finding a setup that works for you and stick to it. And yeah, having that set up all the time, especially for logistics work, so you see what's going on in fleet. Right. So obviously in a bigger fleet, a lot of stuff is going on. I will start randomly switching targets while I'm telling you stuff, so you get a bit of feed. It's still nothing comparable to real fleet, but at least you get a bit of training to react to broadcasts. Obviously, whoever's targeted at any point in time, please broadcast. And you can set shortcuts for broadcasts. That's a generally good idea, not in Logi, but in any kind of ship. But you have to do that in settings. Give them some shortcut. Calls for capacitor are rare, but can happen if you have a spare cap transfer on your Logi ship. You can help capping up. So while we are nicely wrapping here, you can see there are icons popping up in the watch list. So if you have people in the watch list in the broadcast, they will also have an icon indicating their broadcast. That's pretty neat. Just another indication so you can match your fleet history of broadcasts and watch list. But with all the clutter, what I personally like to do in between fights, or like if we are disengaging, to get a clean slate and clear the history in fleet and also the broadcast icons in watchlist. That gives you a bit of a better overview when a fight is done until the next fight starts. So you know who is still to rep. Now, if you actually manage to see that with the bit of damage I do, your shield logistics hit at the beginning of the cycle. So the moment you hit your shield transfer module, it will transfer the shield. So you rep immediately. That's very, very nice because you have immediate feedback, and you can, if you have quick reactions, you can You can react very good to incoming damage. That's not the same for armor. For armor, it's exactly the opposite. So you start cycling, and the actual rep comes in at the end of the cycle. So you need to pre-cycle, basically. That's where the interesting art starts to happen in both logistics. For armor, it's super important to ideally find the perfect spot where you know shield is almost down. I start my armor rep and basically get it in the moment the first damage hits the armor. For shield, it's even more tricky because in an ideal world, people would tell you or broadcast before they actually get damage. So the best spot for shield logi is if people broadcast the moment they get a yellow box from the whole enemy fleet, or red box that's still before the damage hits. So that gives you the chance to lock them up and actually start repping before they are dead. Usually, especially for shield logi, it's pretty bad if people broadcast if they get damage already. It might be too late. And for armor, basically the same. If people broadcast for armor, if they are actually through shield already, that's a problem. That's way too late. So it might not always be on you if something bad happens. The more logi you have in fleet, the easier this gets, because everyone is locking up broadcasts and starting to rep. The individual rep is not that important anymore. But if you have only a few logistics ships around, every rep counts, and especially the speed in which you can change between targets is super important, because if the enemy FC is clever, he will bait you into starting to rep someone and then quickly switch targets and just kill the other target before you can react to that. So as logi, it's super important to make sure you can react to damage changes quickly. That means stop repping as soon as you notice that someone is full or almost full. And second, and that's more important, learn to stagger your reps, which means don't just hit all your F buttons at once, like lock up someone and hit all the F buttons. That's basically the emergency rep. You can do that if you see someone is dipping very low and you definitely want to save them. Hit all the F buttons, put all your reps on there, and you have a chance maybe to help them. But usually in a fleet, try to be a bit calm about it. Start with 1 or 2 reppers, then next one, then next one. Ideal case, something like Burst or Bantam, you have 3 reppers. You do thirds of cycles, basically. So start first one, wait a third of cycle, start second one, wait a third of cycle, start third one. That way you have 2 benefits. First of all, if people shoot, you are not basically, they don't need to wait for full cycle until they get reps, but only a third of the cycle to get some reps, which also helps for alpha, if the enemy fleet is an alpha fleet, because unless they perfectly manage to synchronize their alpha, which usually is not the case, you have a bigger chance to get some reps in between those hits. And the second bonus, which is also pretty neat, is that you have a quicker way to switch off the target, because one of your reppers is definitely just a third of a cycle away from being finished with the cycle. So if you red cycle this repper, it's just a second or something until it's ready to be put on another target, and that can make a huge difference if enemy fleet is switching targets. So that's another thing you want to watch out for. That goes for shield and armor logistics. I even go so far, if you feel comfortable at some point, start just. I mean, I know how it is. In the beginning, you will probably mostly do the emergency hit all F buttons thing because it works. As you grow more confident, you can start cycling, but like as an intermediate step, if you feel, okay, this worked, I saved someone, they are going up, I have all my rappers on the same cycle, you can start slowly putting them off, like just disable one, see if still holding, disable another one, see if still holding. And if they're not holding, then it's the time to stagger the rep, because then you're in perfect control. Okay, I put one rapper off, still holding. Two rappers off, not holding. Okay, I need to put the second one on again. But in that moment, you have the chance to stagger it at least a bit and not put it again on the same cycle as the first one. So that's a nice step in between. Just do the emergency rep all and then switch on and off later on. Okay, let's talk about ranges. Most of you are in logi frics, especially for shield. The range is meh. I think you should have about 4 kilometers optimal range, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Right, there you go. That's not much. That's really not much. It's not a big problem to stay in range of one target, but if you have a bigger fleet and are spread out a bit, switching targets is quickly becoming an issue because you need to actually reposition to be in optimal range. Don't worry though, fall off for shield logistics is pretty dank, so even being a bit over optimal is not a big deal. But be aware that especially for logi frics in shield, the range is super short and you need to reposition frequently. Same goes for T2, by the way. It's not that T1 is just bad. T2 has the same ranges in that case. Cruisers are much more blessed in that way. You get around 29 kilometers optimal for shield cruisers. That's also the same between T1 and T2. Depends on the rappers, the range mostly. So that's pretty neat, 29 optimal, and then you can go out a bit, so you might as well go to something like 40-ish. That gives you a pretty nice range between you and the enemy fleet, ideally. Armor reps generally have more range. I would have to start Pythor, but I think the frigates are around 12 kilometers optimal. And cruisers get up to like 50-ish optimal, which is pretty neat. Fall off is way shorter though, so if you're looking at a cruiser with 50-ish optimal, you range out at 70, so the fall off is not that great. If you compare to your frigates with 4 kilometers optimal, your fall off should be pretty long compared to that. Right, so for Logifrics are great and quickly becoming meta these days, just because they are very fast, very nimble, and still can put out quite a lot of reps, especially the T2 frics. So might be that Logifrics will be more interesting in the future. Logifrics have a super small sig and can go pretty fast, so that's basically your tank. You should constantly be moving in a Logifric. For cruisers, it's not that much of a deal because they are not that fast, and the signature is also not that amazing. Unless you're in something like an AB or Neuros, then it's a thing. Remember that the wrapper size also determines the cycle time a bit. So the small shield boosters on the frigs have a much faster cycle time than the medium and large ones on the cruisers, which also gives you the opportunity to switch targets much faster, and also to burn out your wrappers much faster if you overheat them. Overheating is nice. It's super great. Do it whenever you need it, but be careful, especially with the frigs, because you burn out pretty fast. Right, so we have covered shield logistics, armor logistics, broadcasts, the watch list, the broadcast history, cap chain. What else? Positioning. Usually you might have a logi anchor, so the positioning is not a big deal for you. You just follow your logi anchor. But in general, you want to be in a position that puts your DPS between you and the enemy. So basically, you will turn around your DPS as a midpoint and try to keep enemy DPS on the other side of that midpoint. So you have maximum range from the enemy DPS. Okay. Any questions at this point?
I think I have a little tip. If you're running something that's not on cap chain, it's kind of good to turn off auto repeat on your some of your shield reppers so that you're not constantly having to turn them off and on. I keep like one on auto repeat, and then I keep two to where I have to cycle them.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, why not? Obviously, that works if you have something like a scythe, which has really not that great cap.
Yeah, I'm flying a scythe, so I can run one completely cap stable, but if I'm running the other two, I kind of have to pulse them.
Yep, it's a problem. I mean,
yeah, so rather than have to manually turn them off and potentially forget to turn them off, I just have to pulse them whenever I want to use this second and third one.
Yep, that makes sense. As I said, be aware of the cap usage in your respective fit and how it works for you, specifically for your skills. So that's pretty important.
Is there a quick way to get rid of the targets that you've already locked up when it starts filling up your queue of targets?
Yeah, there's indeed. You control shift click the target, and that will unlock.
Oh, much better.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something I forgot. You can also, I don't know if you probably know that, but you can drag targets around. So you can build like 2 rows of targets. I also use that frequently to like line up my FCs in one line, and then the cap bodies to the side usually. So I have one like constant line. This is the line of people I log up at the beginning of the fight and never unlock. And then I have a second line of like coming and going targets, like whatever is broadcasting, I lock them up. Maybe the next 1, 2, 3, depending on the ship, and then start unlocking that line, but never the other one. That's also pretty nice. Also, generally, I try to have pre-locked as much as possible, especially snowflakes, FCs, other logistics. And I try to keep 2 or 3 rotating slots free for broadcasts. Depends on the ship, obviously. Like I'm used to T2 logic cruisers with 10 targets, so there it's super easy to have a couple of FC, snowflake, and still have 3 free slots. That's obviously different in a frig with just 6 slots total. You have to rethink that and maybe go with just 2 broadcast slots and then 4 permanent slots or something. Good point is though, in frigs you will never have cap chain, so that's good. Also, it's pretty neat that since a while you can see how much reps you're actually doing, just like the damage you're doing. This is helpful because you can see when you over rep, So it's another indicator of when you can maybe take off a rep or two of a target. Just get used to it, learn when you can reduce reps or when you can switch reps to someone else, because usually you get the broadcast, you know you need to rep, but there's no indication when you need to stop repping. Right, broadcast priorities. Obviously, all kinds of people will broadcast. You will never have the perfect fleet where only the important targets broadcast. You will have the occasional freak broadcasting or whatever. It shouldn't happen. It happens. So just be aware. Might be that there are targets you actually don't want to rep, just because it takes cap and you need to switch off the rep and put them on something else. FCs obviously have priority in reps because if they die, the fleet usually falls apart. So you want to keep them up as long as possible with everything you have. Some of the special snowflakes, usually FCs will tell you that, are also pretty important for the whole fleet. So they might also be something to definitely keep up. And yeah, bombs, you have probably heard the please don't broadcast for bomb damage thing. It's super annoying because bombs, smart bombs and bomber bombs do AoE damage, so a lot of people will get damaged. The damage can be pretty substantial. In that case, it is fine to broadcast. Like if it actually is damaging you in a way that you seem to be dying, you probably did something wrong, but it's the way it is. You cannot change it in that moment. Please broadcast. But in any other case, if you just get a bit of shield damage, please don't broadcast. And yeah, that's what happens if you see a lot of broadcasts. It's usually smart bombs or bombs. It's super annoying because you start locking up people, give them 1 or 2 reps, they're full again, and at the same time the next or 2 up broadcast target is dying because they actually got hit by the enemy fleet. Not much you can do besides telling people again and again, please don't broadcast for that damage, and especially for you if you fly DPS and get hit by a bomb or smart bomb, keep calm. If you really seem to be dying, broadcast. Otherwise, please don't broadcast. So, what else can I tell you? Well, basically, besides damage, you obviously need tank on your ship, just as some general things. Yeah, you don't need damage. You need you need tank on your ship. ECM is one of the nastier things against logistics, because basically you cannot do anything, and then you need to restart locking everyone up. So that's super annoying. So you want to avoid getting jammed. Ways to do that is obviously get your sensor compensation skill up, and apart from that, have something like a sensor booster with ECCM script, or a signal amplifier in the low slot, which also boosts the sensor strength against ECM. Well, I mean, in fleets, you usually fly one of the doctrine fits. They all, I think, don't have anything of this. They neither have SIGAMs nor sensor boosters. But if you look at logi fits, it's something to keep in mind, that you might want to protect yourself against ECM. Sensor booster and SIGAM both also help. Yeah, exactly. The armor ones do, because they have more mid slots. For shield logistics ships, you usually have, or you tend to have more open low slots. So you can fit SIGAM, which doesn't have a script and is passive, doesn't give same big amount of bonus like a sensor booster, but it's still neat, still can help. So those are the 2 modules. Right, so this is an all-around nice thing for Logi. It increases the amount of targets you can lock if you have the skills for it. the targeting range, scan resolution, and sensor strength. So all the things. The other thing that can happen is that you get sensor damped. Usually more annoying is range damps, because then you might get out of lock range of whatever you want to rep. But it's not that big a deal, because unless you're in armor logistics and really sit at 60 away, sensor dampening your target range is not a big deal. Like if you're at 30 away, okay, you might need to pull into 20. If they damp you even more, then yes, you have a problem, but it's not that big a deal. Yeah, exactly. Void bombs. Obviously, anything that tampers with your cap is super annoying. You don't want to run out of cap. It's rule number 1 for logistics: never run out of cap, or you're dead, pretty much. And the rest of the fleet is dead too. So yeah, try to avoid newts, void bombs, stuff like that. Generally, avoid enemies. That's rule number 1. Never get too close to enemies. They are bad. I personally tend to like specialization. As someone said, there are armor bots in the bullship. That's great. It's a good idea. If you have space besides a set of logi drones, you can obviously bring ECM drones or damage drones, but I very much prefer to have the first set, and if there's only one set in ship, then that's the only set as rep bots in some way or another. All right. Think we are pretty much done here, unless you have more questions. Oh, there's obviously one thing I forgot. If you really like logistics and want to have something for the future, if you're already in T2 logiships, next step up is FAX. That's one thing. Force Auxiliary. That's the capital repair ship. Pretty much does the same thing. It has capital rep modules, just as you're used to. Only special thing is that it has a mode that's called triage. It's a special module in the high slot. You activate it. When you activate it, you cannot move anymore. You rep like hell. You tank like hell. Yeah, you cannot move. You cannot get reps from others. You cannot dock. You cannot jump. You just sit there for the cycle of the triage module and hope to survive, but you rep amazingly. Cab is much more of an issue with faxes in many ways, because they also need cap to jump out. So like if you want to get out of the middle of a fight, you need to stop repping early. But apart from that, they pretty much work the same as small logistics ships. But that's something to look at if you really like logistics for future stuff. T3 cruisers is also a thing. You can have rep fits with those. They don't get a range bonus, so you basically fall down to the range of Logifrix again. But they have amazing tank and can have a pretty nice cap management. So it's an option for some fleets if you want to have very tanky logi. Can work.
I think they can do blops too. This is the other neat thing with them. They can do the covert ops jumps.
Yeah, exactly. That works too.
That's why they're kind of special, and that the only logistics that can do that, I think.
Yes, apart from AT.
Hospital Sin.
Yeah, exactly. Hospital Sin, like you can there's some battleship configurations with remote reps that like cross rep the fleet. So Sins are one of those ships. They have Sins are basically like Dominic's is a bit in better. So they can do a lot of drone damage, still have high slots, and they can use some of the high slots for rep modules. They don't get any bonus on those rep modules, but still, if you have 5 Sins and all of them have rep modules, you can cross rep.
Yeah, you can spider tank.
Yeah, exactly, spider tank, and that works also for Dominic's and Dominic's Navy issues. It's like the primary thing. Maybe at some point we could do a nice Dominic's spider tank fleet, and go out there. Yeah, exactly. The Dominic's wormhole fit. Same for the Nestor. As I said before, Nestor at least has bonus on remote reps, so it's pretty neat for these kind of fleets. But that's, let's say, exceptional. If you have the skills to fly Armalogy, you will be able to fly that if you have the ship skills for those ships. So it's nothing Logi special. It just happens to happen at some point. But apart from that, that's it. Yeah, no. For the blobs thing, actually, if you're rich enough, or if you somehow are in the position of an AT Logi ship, the Rabiso, the Etana, those can fit cover-ups cloaks, so they could work as well for this kind of blobs fleet. But yeah, the price.
The Rabiso can also blobs?
It can fit a covered ups cloak, so I think it can. I never tried. I mean, I don't have one.
Yeah.
But I imagine it can.
Next year, Yukiko.
Well, yeah.
Just blow the entire AT budget on the ship.
Well, even then. I mean, Rabisu and Etana.
Wasn't the Rabisu that died like 200 billion or something?
Yes, Rabisu and Etana are super rare because they are very popular, especially in AT. And from what I heard from looking around, you have to have at least 250 bill if you actually want to get into one these days. So nope. Sadly not.
Yeah, I'd rather build a T-Goon. Blowing it out.
Well, it's a funny ship. Playing around at Pi-Fi is pretty neat. It's very amazing. Yeah, so that's all from my part, from my side. I think you have a good overview of everything logistics. Remote answer wrappers are a thing. I don't think we have any fits for them, but they exist and they are pretty nice, especially in smaller fleets. If you need a bit of burst to either win or lose the fight, it's pretty neat to have one answer. And then you have about a minute where you can wrap amazing amounts, and then you drop down. So that is the minute you need to kill something. Or your fleet needs to kill something. Additionally, just because it's also becoming a thing, you might want to look at command bursts in the future. If you really like to fly Logi and at some point want to get into Logi anchoring, if you like that too, then you can look at command shifts and command bursts, because it can be nice to Logi command from a command ship and give your Logi nice bursts. Clear history, yeah. Didn't I say that in between? I think I said that I prefer to clear broadcast history in between fights or engagements. Mind Flood, yes, I thought about that and then forgot it again. Sorry, but yeah, Mr. Drug Baron #1. Thanks for reminding me. Drugs are a thing. Mind Flood is amazing because all the drawbacks are not really important for logistics ships. So just take as much Mind Flood as you can, because it just gives you more cap all the time. Obviously, it's a cost factor, but if you can, I don't know. It's not that important for cap chain fleets, but anything else, definitely you want to have some Mind Flood around. Right, Baron posted the Logi Anchor Drake. That's one example of command bursts. It's a pretty neat ship for Logi anchoring because it's much tankier than the Logi usually. It has smart bomb to get off drones off your Logi and bursts to help your Logi be more tanky and be more resistant to ECM. So that's very, very nice. Bulk discounts. Let's talk later. I might want to order some Mind Flood.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but yeah, Mind Flood is good. It's definitely something to have around. Implants can help too. Obviously, only something if you're sure you don't die, but there are a lot of neat hardwirings that give you cap and reduce cap usage for reps or give more reps. Wait, do I even have some of those still in? Yeah. So you have something like this. Shield emission systems gives a bonus on the capacitor need of shield boosters. Remote shield boosters exists in many different variants of percentage. That is nice. Well, shield capacity is nice for any ship. Also exists in many different variants of percentage. There's also something for cap, which I don't have right now, but you can probably find it. All those also help a bit if you really want to max it out. Right. I think that's it. Any more questions? Otherwise, I'm done.
Not a question, but I'm going to put in a plug. I typically run or am part of the Recog runs just after downtime every day. We need logi in the when we run the site, and so if you can do a cruiser logi ship, everybody's welcome to come and run the Recog with us and potentially get part of the 3 bill loot that we may end up getting.
It's like a 25% chance or third.
Roughly one a week.
Yeah, so about roughly 1 in 5, 1 in 6, depending on how often we're gonna rerun it.
Nice.
But scythes are very handy to have in those sites.
Yeah, if you want to get into fitting logi ships, especially for small gang or solo stuff, hit me up anytime. It's like or in game. I have a lot of fits from AT, and yeah, all the ships have their pros and cons. You need to get used to those because especially the ships that usually you run with cap chains can be quite nice, like the Osprey, for example. Works also nicely as a solo ship. Yeah, and join Copfly Logi on Slack, definitely.
I don't think you covered it, but I think there's a specific channel for cap chain use that people are supposed to be on in fleets.
Yeah, I don't know which one is the current one because we have so many of them. The Logi Brave, is that still the one? Yeah, exactly.
And
there's so many of them.
Anyway, you use the cap chain channel names before you and after you to figure out who to cap chain with.
Logi
Exactly.
Brave's got links to both of them. The T2 use Brave Cap Chain, and Brave Ospreys 2 is their channel. They're both at the message of the day of the Logi Brave.
Very good. Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point, but that's something to cover quickly. If you do cap chain the first time, you will hear something like 1 up, 1 down. That refers to the order, to some order, and the order is usually in some special channel like this one, the cap chain channel. That's why you have a separate chat channel to get everyone in that is part of the cap chain, and then the order of the members of the channel, that's alphabetical order, gives you the order you need. So if you look at 1 up, 1 down, you look to the person below you in that list and the person above you in that list of channel. If you're the last one and you went 1 down, you go all the way up to the top one. So it circles around basically. If you're top one, need 1 up, you go down to the last one in that list. You can keep the ships. I don't mind. I stole them from Dojo. Thanks, Dojo. Yeah, so that's how it works. If you hear that one up, one down, it refers to the cap chain channel list order. So always have that open. That's also how you build your watch list for the cap chain. You take one up, one down, and then two up, two down, and that's your 4 people, like 2 immediate partners, and then the 2 fallback partners if something goes wrong.
So when you're supposed to feed cap to somebody in that situation, do they call something specific and to figure out which part of the chain you break?
Yeah, usually the one that breaks the chain for some reason, like, I mean, dying is obvious because you will see that because you have your cap chain partners logged up. So if they die, you see that immediately. But in any other case, exactly, -1 in the channel and leave the channel. If you're jammed, you usually should call that out. If you're pushed away, call it out. And whoever is your partners, keep the names in mind. So if you hear whatever Yukiko Kami jammed, you know, okay, I won't get cap from Yukiko at this point. And then it's kind of, I mean, jammed is probably the worst because you're still there and you might still need cap. So you're just not giving cap. So ideally, the rest of the chain stays the same and people just survive with less cap for the seconds that it takes to be unjammed. But if it's a longer problem, or if you're yeah, exactly at that point, Mind Flood is interesting. In plans well, or if you're pushed away or something that, and it takes a bit to get back into the cap chain, just make sure that you have your secondary partners, like the next ones in list, and just clear on comms. Look, whatever, Yukiko is gone for at least a minute. Please, whoever, Jinx, please cap chain me now instead of Yuki.
What about when somebody broadcasts a need for cap?
Yeah, that depends a bit. Oh, jammed. What is jammed? So there is something in EWAR called ECM. If an ECM module hits you successfully, that means you lose all your targets and you cannot lock up targets for a couple of seconds till the jam is unjammed, basically. So that's pretty nasty for all kinds of ships, but especially for Logi because you are useless at that point. Exactly, you see a red cycle. I mean, the best indicator that you're jammed is that you lose all your targets. And as Logi, you usually have something locked up all the time, so you will notice pretty quickly that something is gone wrong. Yeah, 20 seconds sounds about right. So yeah, ideally you avoid being jammed by having a super high sensor strength, but it's still a random process, so you cannot have 100% security against jams, so you might get jammed at some point. And in that case, well, obviously you are not giving cap to anybody else. People will still give you cap unless you tell them not to, but you will have 2 partners that get less cap. So you should at least tell them so they are aware and either request cap from someone else or know they need to be careful with their cap. So what is if someone broadcasts for cap? Ideally, before the fleet starts, people looking at LC here, but generally more experienced Logic people have figured out how the fleet composition is, what kind of cap transfers you have available, and which pilots have Logistics 5, because the bonus on the cap chain ships is so that with Logistics 5, you usually give a lot more cap. So if you're receiving from a person with Logistics 5, you will get more cap. And it might help you to get enough cap. Like if 2 Logistics 5 people cap chain each other with 2 cap transfers, it is easily possible for them to remove one of the 2 transfers for 1 or 2 cycles and put them on someone else. That's not a big deal for them. So figure out who those people are that are available with getting cap from a Logi 5 pilot and having Logi 5 themselves. That's the ideal thing. And those people can, if someone calls for cap, can just remove one of their cap chain partners, ideally call it out, say, okay, hello, I will not cap you for 2 cycles, and put that cap on someone else. Yeah, exactly. Usually 1 down. That's typical. That can happen, Mia, but it's basically the jam module cycles. So whenever it cycles, there's a new chance to get jammed. So technically you're not you're not jammed all the time, but you get jammed again and again. But it feels like there's no gap, basically, no helpful gap. So if the module cycles and every cycle it hits you, you're jammed for as long as it hits you. So might be 20 seconds, 40 seconds, a whole minute, even 2 minutes. That can happen. It's rare, but it's random based, totally random based. So it can absolutely happen. You can be jammed for a whole fight, basically. That is also possible. Yeah, exactly. Sensor compensation helps. Boosts, information links help you. Sensor boosters, SIG amps, all that can help, but usually, yeah, depends on the fit. But yeah, as said, it's super rare to get jammed out for that long, and you cannot know beforehand. So you only know I'm jammed for the next 20 seconds. You don't know if you're still jammed afterwards. So it's a new chance to get jammed or not jammed after those. You can, I mean, if you really have problems, you can try to get out of range of the jams, but that's also hard. Basically, no, not much you could do at that point. All right, did I forget something? I don't think so. Get into logi anchoring. It's pretty neat. It's fun. It's interesting. Don't worry too much if you do it. Keep the one rule in mind that you keep the DPS between you and the enemy fleet. Remember cap, especially if you have a fleet of mixed people with cap chain and not cap chain. The people without cap chain will have problems following you if you do MWD all the time, because they don't have unlimited cap. You keep ranges in mind, also speeds. Check the speed of the main fleet beforehand. If they are slower than you, you can be a bit slacking behind, because you can always burn up. But if they are faster than you, or at least or equally fast, be careful and don't don't burn too far in the wrong direction. Follow them more closely. Apart from that, just try it out. It's an interesting experience, and in the beginning, don't worry too much about your own reps. Might be too much to get out the perfectly staggered reps and get your anchoring perfect. And then if you don't get the anchoring perfect, you risk the whole fleet. So rather have a few reps less by not repping yourself. Good. That's it. I'm done. It's long enough. I don't want to keep you up any longer.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Enjoy lodging, and let's hope I see you all in fleet soon. It's really neat to be space healer and actually save people.
It's a lot more fun than doing only F1 pushing when the FC tells you to.
Yeah, I agree. But it's, I mean, it's a thing of experience and what you like. Just try it out. If you like it, stick with it. There's a lot to be done in Logi. It's a learning curve that is pretty long, and at the end there is AT, and then you can really master your solo flying skills, and it's a whole new level of logging.